Hello and welcome to ThoughtCast, the SPJIMR podcast, a conversation about business and leadership between a corporate head and an academic. We are back today with a new episode of ThoughtCast. My name is Vineeta Dwivedi and I teach business communication at SPJIMR. With my own background in journalism and media, I am very happy to introduce today's guest, Mr. Partha Sinha, President, Bennett, Coleman Company Limited, the company that publishes the Times of India, the Economic Times, and many other marquee newspapers. Mr. Sinha has worked with Citibank, Dwivedi and Mr, Z, Publicis, PBH, and McCain World Group. And he has won many awards and accolades. Hello, Partha. Happy to have you here on this podcast, this platform here today. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you, Vineeta, for getting me on this platform. I'm also very happy to be here. It's always great to talk to the academic side of life.
Great, and we are really looking forward to this conversation. And as I was thinking about what to ask you, I read this about you. In a career spanning about 30 years, he has been a nuclear design engineer, a banker, the strategy and marketing head of media and internet companies, and an advertising strategist. How did you manage to pivot and evolve so beautifully, Partha? This is really amazing.
The best part of it is that none of it was actually very planned. So it's just one thing kind of led to another. So I, like any middle class person of my age, we knew that there are two institutes which are called the gateway to an assured career. They were called IITs and IIMs, right? So when I passed out of Standard 12, I wrote my IIT exam, and I went to IIT Kharagpur. Though at IIT, the thing which interested me most was creative writing, dramatics. So I was a literary blue. I was a part of most of the dramatics production. I was a part of the debate team. I was a part of all literary activity was what I spent my time on. But then when you pass out, you get a job as a design engineer. So I did some amount of work for designing nuclear power plants. Interesting part. And then I figured out that, like the next step should be, I should try and go to an IIM. And I went to IIM Ahmedabad. And from there, like everybody those days used to join either Citibank or Unilever. So I ended up joining Citibank. And this is just to show that the consultants were not there at that time. This I'm talking about 1991. So I ended up joining Citibank and I spent some time there. And then slowly I started discovering that possibly what interests me more are people and, like how to deal with people, how to influence people's thinking, how to, like bring in some thought which can have a ripple effect in the society and the culture that we live in. So these are the things I started slowly figuring out that these are the things which interest me. So that's why I went on to become an advertising strategist. Even in media companies, my jobs were primarily to help our own brand as well as other brands to connect meaningfully with society and culture. And that's how my career started getting evolved. And that's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and now you're with India's top newspaper group. And one of the first things I want to ask you, and that comes to my mind, is about the decline in newspapers. That's a real thing. It's happening globally. I was reading a PwC Media Outlook report. It says that the impact of the pandemic on the news industry is really poor, especially on newspaper industry, and there is years of slow recovery ahead. What's your view on this, especially because India has always been a very vibrant newspaper market, but it's been ravaged by the lockdown?
Okay, I want to answer this question. Interesting question. I want to answer this in two very distinct parts. One is what is happening in terms of recovery of revenue and recovery of circulation. Everybody said that it will take years. We are pretty close to 80-85% of recovery. And if things work out well, we'll be close to 95% plus recovery in March itself. So as far as recovery is concerned, we are almost there. And if not, it will take us maybe a month or two more. But So uh, all the doomsday saying which was around that newspapers will now slowly shut down, I think has all been proven wrong. But if you have to try and understand the underlying truth behind it, there is something slightly more than that, which is everybody was in a hurry to declare the demise of newspaper. Nobody understood that how the dynamics of news will change, and therefore what increased role a source credibility will bring. Today, the biggest crisis we are facing across the globe is veracity of news. News which was supposed to be taken as gospel today is being used as weapon of mass destruction almost, because news has got politicized. News has got in the hands of like greedy corporates. News is being used for and against vested interest rather than for public use. Now, in that kind of a scenario, source credibility takes a very different hue, and nobody has the kind of source credibility that print or newspaper has. Today, when you read something on WhatsApp, that can actually spoil your day, and then you realize that the whole thing was based on some vested interest who was spreading some falsehood.
True, I agree with you, Partha. And I think you're absolutely right that source credibility and the kind of journalism that we see in newspapers has become even more important. But and I'm not disputing that fact, but this is also true that for a lot of people today, they don't have the time to read, and most of our day is entirely taken by a handful of tech media companies, so to say. So how does newspaper compete in this for time, for people's attention, for audiences' eyeballs?
Okay, just to share a little data with you, we have just finished our brand track, and the brand track result shows us that average time spent with the newspaper has gone up compared to last year at all age group. Now, the interesting thing is, what is the role of a newspaper and news in society? If a tech company is taking a mantle saying that I want to make the society less educated and less opinionated, then it's one kind of society that we'll get into, versus there will always be a counterpoint where there would be a social or a cultural force which will make the people more educated, have independent opinion. As long as these two forces are there, and there is a need for people to remain educated and have independent opinion, newspaper will always have a role. The form may change. Tomorrow we may become podcast. A lot of news may get into podcast, but the quality of that news which newspaper brings is what defines a newspaper. The physicality is also important, but the physicality is not the be all and end all of everything. If you see something like a New York Times, a majority of New York Times is today on the internet. Similarly, the form can take any shape eventually going forward, but the need to have faith in keeping the society educated, keeping the society informed, and keeping the society enthused about independent thinking. As long as this need is there, newspaper is not going to go anywhere.
So do you think revenue model can change, like you were talking about the for newspapers also?
Absolutely. Everything can change. But I think nobody, when they were predicting the doomsday, nobody was analyzing the fundamental societal or cultural need of newspaper, the role that newspaper plays. As long as that is not analyzed, I think any analysis on the future of newspaper is incomplete. And therefore, most of the analysis that I've read are fairly incompetent analysis. Very few analysis were competent analysis where they took into account this need for the society to remain educated, engaged, and I mean, the whole society can't be dumbed down, right?
No, I'm very glad to hear that from you. That if from the top newspaper group in the country, you are so optimistic about the future of newspapers, it's really good, because the lockdown really perpetuated this idea. Anyway, we were looking at newspaper industry in a decline, and then people stopped getting the newspapers, and now many people are not bringing it back. And if I'm not wrong, Partha, you started this job at the Times of India, just before the lockdown. So this must have been a really big challenge in front of you.
In fact, today I joined on 24th of March 2020. So today kind of is the anniversary of my joining Times of India. So, and I think the lockdown started on 22nd of March. So I spent all 1 full year in lockdown, and a few interesting things emerged during that time. Of course, the biggest problem we faced was physical. The newspaper was not physically getting delivered to people's homes, and so our e-paper subscription went up. So all those things were happening. But the best thing I learned at that time was that people were information starved, people were opinion starved at that point in time. And the biggest problem which was coming through was unverified news. Imagine when you woke up in the morning in Bombay, half the time you got forwards on your social media which said that your road is closed, your next door building is closed, and all those kind of falsehoods were creating a sense of panic which was making living really difficult. Nobody asked that question, that what is the veracity, what is the source code of that. And that's the time we, I think, upped our ante, and we made sure that we kept on pushing news which is authentic news. We got we increased our interaction with government channels. We made sure that whatever we were putting up was original, authentic government understanding of how the pandemic is panning out, what is happening to the city, what is happening to every city of the country, what is happening at a policy level, how quickly and what can happen, and what are the truths and myths about this whole pandemic situation. And there was so much of reassurance what we could provide. And that's the time I realized that people who are pronouncing the death of print, they are doing it in a bit of a hurry. I think globally the idea of veracity will never go.
But we do rue the loss of Mumbai Mirror in Bombay City.
Mumbai Mirror was launched for a particular purpose and it served its purpose. So therefore, there was it could have even happened maybe a couple of years ago. So we are not saying that it was only a matter of COVID, but in some way, not only in newspaper industry, but in every single company, what I'm hearing is that what COVID can do is what a management consultant can't do. So the management consultants are brought in to optimize an organization, to create a more efficient organization. They do those reports, and a lot of times the reports are not implemented because sometimes there's a gap between what they saw and what actually the reality is. What COVID could do was it could very clearly show the parts of the organizations which are critical and parts of the organization which are not critical. And every single organization took the decision. So as they say that COVID was possibly the best management consultant that there was in the world.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's a very interesting point you just said. I would like to, change directions and go back in your career to your advertising career, which was a very long and successful innings. Could you share with us a most abiding achievement or a memory?
See, I worked in advertising for too long, so like if you ask me to pick up one, it will be quite difficult. But I have been part of quite a few interesting pieces of work. But let me tell you an overriding thought and something I don't know whether people know that about advertising. In advertising, leadership is only about thought leadership. It's not the senior-most person in the room who is listened to. It's the most interesting voice in the room which is listened to. So, unless and until you are a thought person, unless and until you are a person who can understand, like society and culture at a slightly deeper level beyond the obvious superficialities, you can't really do very well in advertising. And that's the beauty of that profession. People who are intuitive, and also people who naturally go a little deeper into understanding an issue. So they always do well. So my understanding of advertising was that the marketing companies give you marketing problems. A good advertising company gives you a human solution, because the solution can't be a marketing solution, right? Marketing solution to a marketing problem usually never leads to a good. It always has to be a human solution to a marketing problem. And that's where I think advertising is possibly the most interesting but yet underrated profession that there is, because unless and until a solution is humanized, there is no way a company will do well, because a company typically serves people. Even a B2B company also serves people.
But why is it underrated, you said? I mean, how would you say it is as a career to young professionals and like right BSU students? So why is it underrated?
Okay, let me tell you something. When I was passing out of B school. People were still joining advertising. I remember that some 8 people from IIM Ahmedabad joined advertising. Today, imagine any IIM Ahmedabad pass out joining advertising, because what has happened is, over a period of time, it has started, the business model was created in a manner that it started devaluating itself. So, I mean, a few days ago, a very senior client person on another context was saying that, if so much of money is paid to the creator of the advertisement, then that's not fair. More should be paid to the media, and very little should be paid to the creator. And I was asking a question saying, suppose you, magnify and multiply the advertisement to whatever level possible, but it's fundamentally a bad piece of communication. Then what happens to the brand? So why don't you always think that you want to pay higher to people who actually create? Now, this model was never propagated by advertising. So, because two things happened. One is, advertising became a victim of what is the latest and what is the new, which is digital. Eventually, what happens in digital? You have very sophisticated algorithmic way of reaching people, but then reaching with what?
With a message, with content.
When is the last time you've seen anything about a brand on your mobile? You haven't, right? But there's a thriving industry which is bigger than the advertising industry. So the problem is that advertising never stuck to its own gun, which was their ability to understand society, culture, and human beings better than anybody else, and therefore bringing in solutions which are long lasting and very valued. Now, if that was kept alive, then the business model would have been different, and we could have had paid people, more money for. I mean, I'm not saying that management school guys are necessarily brighter or any such thing, but I'm saying, by going by an average society yardstick, you go to those places to hire brighter people, right? But you can't today, because the model itself has, undervalued the whole profession.
But does it pay in the long run? So maybe starting careers may not be well paid, but in the long run, it does pay, doesn't it?
As they say, in the long run, we are all dead, especially for today's youngsters. Long run means 5 years, and 5 years, nothing much can change. So, unfortunately, the model has become such that we can't really even offer a 5 year window. In a 5 year window, it'll be really difficult to, make sure that we live up to our youngsters' ambitions and aspirations.
I was looking through your profile and I noticed that you're a sports enthusiast, a die-hard fan of cricket and football, and your son is too. And fascinatingly, you've turned this passion into an audio diary. Is that a diary? Please tell us more about that.
Well, it's not an audio diary. There's a setup called Founding Fuel, and they were having a series of conversation between, like fathers and sons. So they asked me what would be my preference, and the only place outside, kind of family issue that I and my usual parental supervision, what I connect with my son is sports. So we decided to talk about sports. So it was just one, webcast, and he wrote an article, and I had to put some audio comment on that. So that was it. But yes, I am a big sports enthusiast, because I believe very strongly that there is still some purity left in sports, because if you take other popular culture items, increasingly, like the kind of music I like, I'm finding increasingly that there are very few people like that music. I'm a big Indian classical music fan, so I don't get too many people around me, and uh, who share the same interest. Then, even if you look at book is a very personal thing, but even if you look at movies, the kind of movies I like are, again, like there are not too many takers. So sports is the only thing left which is a little Puritan in its construct, and it still has a big following. So therefore, I kind of enjoy both sides of it.
Yeah, and it's also mass. Everybody connects with it. It is, like they say, it really unites a whole country, a whole nation, several countries together if you're supporting the EPL as a team there. Would you say that this is also your hobby, to talk about sports or to have a serious conversation about sports? Or
I have done serious conversations around sports. I have done it. I have done sessions on sports and kind of learning from sports in my alma mater. I like talking about sports because I think sports has got many dimensions and it can be understood from many aspects. I like the, you know, beyond the content of the sports, which is actual game. I also like the way sports influence us as people. I like the way sports kind of shape us as individuals, as a society, as families.
yeah, and it seems like it's your hobby. It's a serious hobby that you have, and this reminds me of Peter Drucker. In managing oneself, he's like the man who invented management itself. He's talked about a second or a parallel career or a very serious hobby that can make a difference somewhere else. What do you think about it, and what's your take on that?
I think a second hobby is a great idea. I unfortunately am. I don't have a very focused hobby yet. So I occasionally paint. I'm a big sports enthusiast. I occasionally write. You know, a lot of my writer friends, keep on urging me. They're saying at least do your first book. So I my problem is I'm not dramatically focused. I'm not one of those people who are copybook management gurus who are very focused. They know how to sort of spend time, how to allocate time between first hobby, first career, second hobby. So unfortunately it's not that, but I understand the importance of it. So uh, as I keep on saying that what you represent in your organization is your understanding of life, your understanding of the society that you live in, and your understanding of the culture that you live in. So therefore, even the organization should encourage people to have other lives so that they can bring in other perspective. Because imagine an unidimensional organization, even robots can be programmed better. But if human beings, that's why I don't like I mean, I like people working hard, but I don't like people who have nothing beyond work in their lives, because they bring in nothing to the table. More often than not, they regurgitate the same thing. And as you know that circular logic is always the poorest form of logic. You end up discussing the same thing and it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller in size.
True. And also, there is no fun in life, and there's nothing to look forward to other than work. So I often tell our students, yeah, about this networking, the power of friendships, alliances that we make. And you've been to top education institutions, big companies. Would you think that that is an achievement in your life?
Of course, I'm very proud of the kind of friends I have, not only through my academic institutes and the places I've worked in. It's also through my interest and other stuff. I have made very good friends. So I'm really proud of my friends, and I'm very grateful uh, that they're there and they keep me a grounded, b enriched. But I must take this opportunity to tell one more thing, which is something which could be used with your students. There is no substitute to reading. Because typically, what happens if you want to pick up experience through your own life, it takes more than a lifetime. A good book is a summary of somebody else's lifetime's experience, right? Why would you let go of that shortcut? Why would you let go of that? So I seriously haven't still understood, when there is something available which is a shortcut, and a short way of getting success, why would anybody let it go?
That's great advice, sir. That is really good. I finally want to kind of wrap up our conversation about your understanding about the digital disruption that is happening all around the world. And you being in the media industry, understanding the advertising industry at close quarters, where do you think the world is heading in terms of how media and digital are going to change shape in the coming years?
First of all, a lot of people have asked me this question, a lot of brands, that what should be my digital strategy? So my answer is very simple. You don't need a digital strategy. You need a strategy for the digitally connected world. Today, the world has changed. It has got digitally very well connected. So your strategy needs to change, but you don't need a digital strategy. It's when I say, or when people ask me that, people are buying stuff on e-commerce, so I think I should only advertise in digital. I tell them a very simple thing in saying, in that logic, an FMCG company should only advertise inside a Kirana store, right? Because that's the place where people buy. Why do we even take a hoarding or take a newspaper ad or a television ad? Here is my take on the thing, that of course technology will come and do things which will make life more convenient. I won't say easy, but more convenient, because technology hasn't always made it easy. Try to return a product that you have bought on the internet, and then suddenly the true color of internet comes out, right? But it's convenient. There is no question. I mean, it's not necessarily making life easier and better, but it's making life a lot more convenient. Agreed. But to think that therefore people's fundamental thought process will change is a bit of a stretch. Even if the world gets digital, we'll all remain human beings, right? I mean, unless and until digital will make us robots. So so some of what is happening is, because the internet is a new way, or digital is a new way of connecting, new way of living life, doing things, so a lot of base instincts are coming out also. Or if you see the data, see the biggest like driver for purchase on the internet is price. People end up buying the cheapest thing. So this is as early as kind of barterage, right? This is a consumer buying 0.0, that
Very
the
good
cheapest
point.
product will sell. So, or if you look at some of the things, that how a company like one of the largest social media company, you all have seen the movie, I don't want to take the name, it was created to compare girls in a college. So obviously the basic instinct is very, I would say, it brings out the absolute basic gross instinct in you. So that is a thing as a society we need to watch out for. As they say that internet was created to bring in singularity, but what we are getting is what is called cephalarity. Remember that movie Wall-E? So cephalarity is that you will be sitting in your sofa and like eating junk food, getting fat, and like uh,
Yes.
doing right swipe on Tinder. So that I think is a very strange state of affairs to be in. So it is convenient, it is easy, but it has to be tempered with things which, see, as a society we have evolved, as human beings we have evolved. We can't get that evolution out of the window because the world is becoming digital, right? So we can't become primates. We can't be monkeys with internet connection, right? So that's one
Yeah.
part of the story.
Yes. Yeah. And
the,
we have to
the
be
sec-
aware of the dark side of the web as well.
no, and that we are increasingly becoming like a less evolved version of ourselves. That is scary,
Dumbing down that is happening.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
The second thing is, people don't share information, people share prejudices and biases. So what is supposed to be the information superhighway has become the prejudice and biases superhighway, right? So like, see what social media has given us. They've given us words like prostitute, libtard, bhakt. This is this the world that we are like trying to be a part of? Then comes the next big question, that are we using data responsibly? Because if you notice, the whole world is talking about data. Digital is, the backbone of digital is data. See how, where we have learned to use the data. We have learned the usage of data from military organizations like CIA, like KGB, so most of the algorithms are inspired by them. And that means your data was used against you. Today also in digital, unfortunately, your data is being used against you. So what we need is not data intelligence. I keep on saying what we need is data empathy. Unless and until we use data to genuinely help people rather than using their data. Today, what is data used for? If they find a weakness in you, if they find that you have a weakness, say a sweet tooth, they will keep on pushing you to consume more sweets, right? And then somebody will come and scare you because you are consuming so much of sweet, so they will sell you some medical services. And because the medical services are expensive, so the insurance guy will come and sell you insurance services. So your data is practically being used against you, right? Your data is not being used for empathy. And I think that will be the biggest change in coming years. I don't think we need artificial intelligence. I think what we need is what is called artificial empathy. And I've been doing a lot of thinking around this. Unless and until algorithms start making us better human beings, internet is not going to get its full potential, not going to go to its full potential. So I know that there is no word like artificial empathy. I'm trying to coin it. It sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but then artificial intelligence is also an oxymoron, right? So, so if artificial intelligence can become big, why not artificial empathy? Why can't we use data and machine and algorithms to make us better human beings? And that's my big point about digital. Till such time this happens, I think digital is only. I mean, as of now, the picture is not very bright.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think it's a brilliant point that bringing data empathy or artificial empathy into digital and the internet, that's the way to go forward for humankind. I think that was a brilliant idea on which I think we can end today's conversation, Partha. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. A lot of people who would listen to it, I'm sure, will hopefully have enjoyed it and learned something really new. And we rarely get a chance to talk about advertising and newspapers and the whole industry so candidly as you have just talked to us about it. Thank you so much, Partha.
Thank you, Vineeta. It was a pleasure. I also enjoyed the conversation a lot. So hopefully it's useful for you guys. So thank you very much.
Yeah, indeed, it will be. Thank you. Have a nice day. You were listening to SPJIMR's ThoughtCast, produced by Vineeta Dwivedi, edited by Amulya, supported by Parth, Funny, Rishabh, and Kaushik. Thank you for listening.